Hey class, this is Professor Nick Sensky at UNC Charlotte, and this is a tutorial for week 3 of Digital Foundations. And what I'm going to be introducing is just the basics of 3D modeling in Rhinoceros. And Rhino, as we said, is for now a PC-only program. It's accessible through like Windows 7 on the school computers. And you go ahead and open up Rhinoceros just to show you what it looks like. So the first thing you're going to get is when you're opening up a new file or you're opening the program for the first time is the startup template. And here you're going to determine what the units are going to be for the system. And I typically model in feet. I use the large objects feet template. This isn't really that important, but it's always something that comes up. So this is the way you set your units. You can always set your units later if you need to, and the program will rescale them. But just something to kind of keep in mind. So again, I'm using feet for now. Let's go ahead and hit open. So the first thing you're going to notice in Rhino is the four panel interface, and this is necessary because we're modeling on a 2D screen, like a flat screen, and we're trying to model objects that are three-dimensional, and so you need multiple views of an object, multiple orthogonal views in order to understand how an object works. And just to sort of explain what that means, I'm going to just make a simple three-dimensional primitive, so like a box. You can go here and click on the box, and you can see that as I move my mouse, it actually updates on all 4 viewports at the same time. So I'm going to click to set a corner point for the box, and then click to set another. And you can see what's interesting here is if I'm in the perspective view, there's like distortion, right? There's perspective distortion. It makes it hard to judge accurately the proportions of what I'm doing. But if I'm looking in the top view, up here, if I'm moving, you can see as I move it updates as well. It's easier to judge if I'm making a square or if I'm making something, like a long rectangle, this kind of rectangle, a thin one. So if I'm trying to make a square, the one in the perspective viewport, may not look like a square. Maybe you distort it. So you need multiple views, and you want to use the view that basically helps you understand what you're doing better. And the perspective viewport will show you what it looks like in 3D. So if I'm starting from the kind of profile of the object of the square of the cube, top views may be a good idea. So I can use top view, and then I can click. And then I can move up and down in, so let's say, the front view or the right view, because that's actually giving me a good way to tell the depth of what I'm doing. And the top view doesn't show me that, but these other views do. And the perspective view does as well, but again, it's hard to reference because there's distortion and foreshortening, perspective. So it's like, if I was making a small kind of platform, or if I'm making a larger object, that's useful to use those different views. So the different views have different advantages, and that's just how we model things in 3D. And I'm going to do one more click, and that creates the geometry. Okay. So I'm going to back up a bit and explain some things as I go, just so you kind of understand where things are coming from. To undo something, you do Control-Z, as in most programs. Okay. Okay. So again, I'm going to go back to make the box, and you can see that when I mouse over it, there's a little picture of a mouse with a black button on it that says if I click the left button, it's going to create a box. And it goes, the procedure is corner to corner in height. If I hold down the mouse, I can open up this whole panel here, and it spills out, and it's going to show me all these different shapes I can make. I can make spheres, I can make cylinders, cones, things like that. You can move this around, and you can close it, the X. If you just kind of hold it down and you let go, you'll get the shape without opening up the box. You get a different shape. Okay. Press Escape to cancel a command. So again, icons are one way to make things. Another way that's very familiar, it should be familiar to us in CAD, is to actually type in what you want. So you can start typing in, box. And as you type, as you can see, I start typing B. It's going to give me like a list of commands that it thinks I want, and then I can choose one I want, right? And just like in AutoCAD, it has instructions. It says first corner of base. Okay, so it's asking me to draw the first corner of the base. Okay, so I do that in the top view. And then after I do that, after I click the mouse, it says other corner of base or length, so I could type something in here, or I could make the corner. I click it again, and it says height. Press enter to use width. So if I press enter, it's going to do something different. If I choose the height in a viewport and I click, it's going to make that shape. So there's a type in, just like AutoCAD. We have to watch for instructions, just like AutoCAD. Okay, so that's very familiar. Another thing that's like AutoCAD is I can also make that object. I'm going to undo this by going up to the menu. I can say solid box. And in fact, if I spill out of the box here, I can actually choose different kinds of boxes here. Okay, so that's actually interesting. So again, there's 3 different ways to make something. You can make something in the menu, make it with the icon, or make it with the parser. And just like AutoCAD, I do find that the parser is actually the fastest way to go. Another thing that's interesting about the parser is that, so I'm making a box again. You can see these different commands here. There's like a D, underscore P that's got underline, V underline, C underline. So those are the different options. Very much like AutoCAD. You can click on one of these and that'll actually select the option. So for the first corner of the base, I can create it normally. I could create it from the center. So now it says center of base. So maybe I want to make the center here, and then other corner of base. Okay. So here I can make a square from the center. Okay, so there's different options you want to pay attention to. Okay, once you've made an object, you can see the geometry becomes kind of solid, and it kind of takes on a different appearance. So this is the wireframe, and so the wireframe view just kind of shows us the skeleton of the geometry. It's actually a solid, and you can see there's different ways of viewing things. You can right click and you can say you want to do a right click on the label and you can change the view type. They're shaded, okay, and that actually shows us it as a solid. It has a bit of shadow to it. Rendered, which kind of shows us an approximation of what it might look like in the renderer. Ghosted, which is kind of a combination of wireframe and shaded, and you can kind of see the bottom surface in that, so that's kind of useful. X-ray doesn't actually give us the depth cues of it. It gives us the wireframe with the geometry shaded, so that's different. Flat shade. So there's different. That's actually an option. So there's different things you can do for that, and you can actually set different windows to have different viewport types. And again, I'm gonna make a cylinder here. If I make something in a viewport, it's actually going to show up in, so this one's wireframe, this one's shaded, this one's X-ray, and this one's shaded. So you can use different viewports to get different views of things. So you've got different shading types. You can change the view. So this is a perspective view. This is a top view, front, right view. You can change the view by right-clicking. You can say set view. So I can say if I want this to be the front view, and if I want this to be the top view. Okay. Quick thing you can do too is you can actually, when you're in a viewport, you can type in the view you want. So if I want this to be left, I can type left. Okay, left view. I can type right. I can type top. Type bottom. Bottom view. Okay. So those are different types. The other one that's really useful. So those are the orthogonal views, and you basically have 6 of them: left, right, top, bottom, front, back. Okay. And those roughly correspond to the rolled coordinates. The other one that's really interesting and important is perspective. So you right-click, set view, perspective, and that's actually going to give you the a view that approximates what a camera might see. Okay. And what I haven't done yet, I haven't shown you, is that you can actually move the camera when you're in each of these viewports. Okay. And the controls are a little bit different from AutoCAD, so I just want to kind of explain that. The right mouse button is what's called an orbit, and so if I hold down the right mouse button, I can move my viewport around in an orbit. So kind of experiment with that. So you can look at this side of it, look at that side of it. You can pull it around, look at the top, look at the bottom, and that's going to affect it. If you use the right mouse button in an orthogonal viewport, you get a pan. Okay, So that's pan in an orthogonal port. Use the scroll wheel on your mouse to zoom in and out. That should be pretty familiar. So you can go in and you can, kind of adjust the zoom of these things. You can also use, the zoom all, like zoom extents. You can, left click zooms in, puts all the objects. It zooms the window so you can see all the objects. Right click zooms all the viewports to the extents, so that's useful. So again, that's an interesting little tooltip that pops up, right? The left mouse button is zoom extents, right mouse button is zoom extents all. So that's something that's pretty useful. You can also do, you can do a windowed zoom with the icons. You can draw a window and then it'll zoom in. So there's different things you can do. Good question is, how do you pan in a perspective viewport? So pan works with the right mouse button in an orthogonal view, but in a perspective view, it orbits. So to pan in a perspective view, you want to hold shift and then use the right mouse button, and that will pan. Okay, so again, getting used to using your hands and the mouse at the same time. So I'm scrolling with the mouse wheel, panning, orbiting. I can very quickly locate, the things that I'm interested in. Okay, you get used to it. So that's basically how you kind of navigate the viewports, and that's really important thing. The other thing I want to talk about are these kind of panels. And these might not come up by default, so I'm going to go ahead and close them right now. So you might have, your program. Oh, one last thing too, actually. You can maximize a viewport by double-clicking its label. So double-click, and now I get a whole huge perspective view. If I double-click it again, I'll go back to 4 viewports. Okay. You can also change the sizes of these by putting your mouse on the window frame and then kind of dragging it. So you can kind of arrange things however you want. If you want to go back to it, you can do a right click on this and it'll say 4 default viewports, and that'll kind of arrange things back together again. Okay. There's other types you can do. You can change the layout to 3 ports. Okay, so just different things you can do. Okay, so back to what I was talking about. When you open the program up, you might see something like this, but it's very useful to have the layers panel and the properties panel. So the properties panel is accessed by pressing F3. Okay, you can press F3 and it pops up. You can close it with a little X there. Okay, F3. This tells you, in this case, I'm in the viewport, so it tells me things about the viewport. If I click on an object, it's going to tell me what kind of object I have. It tells me what layer it's on. It tells me what color it is, what material I'm using. If you click on details, it'll tell you important things about the object. Some things that are really important is whether it's closed or not. Okay, because you can only do certain things with solids that are closed, so that's important data that you want to have. So again, properties. Okay, if I click on a different object, it's going to tell me things about it. Okay, so properties, and then the other one is the layers palette, and you can access that by typing in layer, and that'll pop up. Otherwise, if you right click on, this is actually the layers swatch. If you right click on it, it'll pop up. And layers work very similarly to the way that you've experienced them in other programs. Layer has a name, change it by double clicking, call this, X layer. Okay, you can change the color by clicking the swatch and then making a different swatch. And that will actually change the color of the object. It doesn't change the real property of it, it just changes the color of it in the display. Right now, everything is on the default layer, but if I make it, if I click on a layer and I double click it and make it current, then anything I make on that layer belongs to it. And it's purple. And these layers, which were created on default, I can turn off and on. So I go in, double click, next layer, can make another object. And again, they're kind of like color coded just so you can understand them. You can always apply different materials to them. We don't really need to worry about that right now. You can see them in the wireframe. The wireframes are colored. So it's a good way to understand what you're working with. Okay. You can change an object layer by clicking on it, and then if you have the properties window, you can just change the layer in your dropdown. Or I can grab multiple things, then I can change all the layers to a different layer. Okay, so that that makes it pretty pretty easy to work with. To make a new layer, you can click on this layer button. Say new layer. And that's really all we need to know for now. But you can lock layers, you can turn objects on and off, that sort of thing. Another useful thing you can do while you're working with layers, you always want to try to filter information. I've talked about this pretty frequently. You want to sometimes you're working on a layer, but you don't want to turn everything off. You just want to work on one particular object. So let's say I want to work on this cylinder. I can click on these objects, and if I hold down Shift, it actually adds to the selection. Okay, so I can click, hold Shift, click, click. Or I can, if I want to subtract something from it, I can click Control, and that'll take it out of the selection. So Shift to add, Control to subtract, and then I can just go into these, and I've got them selected. I can say Hide, H-I-D-E, and they'll be hidden. They're still on the layer; they still exist. I didn't delete them, and I haven't turned off the layer, but I've hidden them so they don't exist. And when I want them back, I just say Show. Okay, so that's kind of a quick way to kind of turn things off and on. And I will do that a lot in class. It's something that I do, so just pay attention to that. If something disappears and you don't know why, ask me. But that's something that I use pretty frequently to kind of filter things for myself. So that's kind of a brief tour of the interface. Go ahead and practice with just making some primitives and navigating around. Just get a feel for the program and just get the kind of logic of it. Before we go on to do anything else, we haven't really done any modeling or anything, any transforms, anything like that. So this is just kind of like a quick way to get into it for now. In the next part, I'll show you how to begin to convert the topo, and that'll be your first modeling job. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. All right, so if you've already gotten acclimated to Rhino, or perhaps you already are acclimated to it, we can move on to the second piece of the tutorial that I want to show you. And what I've got is a file that I put on Moodle for you, and it basically has all the contours already arranged. And your file may be named differently than mine, but just use the file from Moodle. So Rhino files have the extension .3dm, that's 3D model, and just for future reference. So what I've got, it should look familiar, right? These are the lines taken out of AutoCAD. And I'm not going to talk about exporting out of AutoCAD yet. It's not really important right now, but if you need to know about that, talk to me. But so just for now, what I've got is a model that I took out of, I took lines out of AutoCAD. I kind of trimmed them. I made a kind of a line, and I used to kind of trim the topo. I trimmed away most of the other lines, and what I've got is a collection of layers here that I'm going to turn off, this layer that says Other. And what I've got are these topo lines. And if you look at them in a side view, so if I say front view, you can see that these lines are actually been arranged already with some heights. And they're in 2-foot intervals, roughly. They're not precise, but they're 2-foot intervals. And every 10 foot we have another kind of contour line, so we understand them. So all told, the site maybe spans looks like maybe 100 foot. So it's got some contour over the whole site. What we're going to do with this is turn this into a rough digital model that we can use to cut sections. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch back to Perspective View. So we can kind of see it, if we kind of orbit around, you can kind of get the idea of it, but it's just lines. These are lines in 3D space that Sam, our TA, took and moved them into position. Okay, so they started off flat. She took the map of the site and she moved them up so that they match the actual contours. You're not going to have to do that. So what we're going to do is convert these to a surface. Okay, and a surface is like a three-dimensional, like a piece of cloth or a piece of paper. It has no thickness, but it has 3 dimensions. Okay, so it's kind of like a piece of paper. We're going to use that to cut our contours. In order to create that surface, we're going to do a technique called a patch. And for those of you who know anything about 3D, you might ask, why we don't loft these things together. So a loft is when you would take two or more surfaces and you can kind of stretch a surface across them. Okay, we'll talk about this later in the class, but a loft won't work with this because of the complexity of the contours, because we have some contours that occupy the same height but are in different locations. It's not possible to like stretch that loft over it. So what we're going to do is this patch. And to start a patch, we're going to select everything. So we're going to make sure everything else is turned off. Actually, we're going to go to the default layer. So I'm going to do a double click on default. We're going to stretch our window and select everything. Make sure you select everything. Then I'm going to go into the point tool up here, and I'm going to open this up. And I'm going to click on this third one here, which says extract points. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the points that comprise the curves. So click that, and you can see the points pop up. Okay. So you can see all those points there. And those points are going to be the basis for the patch. What a patch does is it attempts to determine a surface using a collection of things. And in this case, the points are going to make it more accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the Topo Lines layer. Now I just have the points. I'm going to go back and select all the points. You might be asking what this object is right here that seems to be. That's just the origin. It just shows us where 0, 0, 0 is. It doesn't actually exist. It's just a reference for the coordinate plane. Okay, so don't worry about it. So we're going to select all the points, and we're type in patch. Okay, and the patch, I've adjusted my point spacing to 0.01, and the U and V spans I'm going to make 99. I want to make this as precise as I can, so just use the kind of settings that I have. You can experiment with them. If you press preview, it'll show you what the actual surface looks like. So you can see it actually creates a surface over the entire bounds of the file. We're going to do something about that in a minute, so don't worry about it. But you can kind of see if we go to shaded, see it actually does create. You can kind of see the contour is matching up with the points. You can experiment with and change things and hit preview, and you'll see the thing update. But I'm okay with this. I'm going to press OK. Okay, so I've actually created the surface. All the points are selected. I don't need them anymore. I'm going to delete them. You can press the delete key. I'm going to just press delete. So you can actually see these the kind of contours here. You can see what's going on with this model. Okay, so we've got this, but it's not actually our site. If we go back and we look at all of our contours again, you can see that actually it exceeds the bounds of our thing. So what I'm going to do is open up this layer other, and these are all the different objects we had. I'm going to go ahead and shift click, so hold shift and click. Right click and say properties. I'm going to turn these all off. Okay. Then I'm going to and then I'm just going to click other. I'm going to click on the layer cut line. Kind of pull this out here. I'm going to turn it on. So cut line is a pink line, magenta line. It's the line that I used, go top view here, the line I used to make the original site. I'm going to use that line to trim away the excess patch. Okay, so I'm going to go in, change to wireframe. So actually in wireframe you don't even see any difference, but if you go to front view, you can see the contour. Okay, let's go back to top view. I'm going to project a curve. So what that means is I'm going to use this curve and I'm going to kind of push it into the surface like you'd push a cookie cutter into dough. And that's going to create a curve that matches the profile of the surface. And I'm going to use that to trim the surface. Okay, so project, just like project. Select curve to project. Okay, and then press enter. Select surfaces to project onto. Okay. My patch is a surface, and then press enter. And it's going to calculate, and then you don't actually see anything, but if we go to perspective, you can see that, okay, our pink one is up here, and then look at the yellow one, it actually matches that surface. Just like a cookie cutter, okay? So that means I can go ahead and turn off my cut line, and I've got my patch and my curve. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go trim, just like in AutoCAD, only now we're doing trimming in 3D. select the cutting object. The cutting object is my curve. Object to trim. You want to click the part you want to trim away, and that's the outside. And that's it. Press return. Let's go back to shaded. So check that out. Now we've got our site. Okay, you can go ahead and click on that outline curve, and you can hide it. You can move it to a new layer, or you can like delete it. You know, there may be other things you can do with it, but you can go ahead and delete it probably. Okay, so we've got a surface now, and that is what I need from you guys for Thursday. That's it. Okay, so again, this is a pretty common procedure. You know, you're gonna extract the points from the curves. You're gonna use that to create a patch, and then you're gonna trim out the patch to get you a surface model. This isn't a solid. We can talk about how to do that later. It's also not extremely accurate. If we turn on the Topo Lines and we look at it, there are places where there are some aberrations. So you can kind of see this piece right here that's not really real. It's kind of created by the kind of mathematical leftovers of the patching operation, and so that's something we want to be aware of. Patching isn't 100% accurate, but it's very close. If you're interested in accuracy, I can show you a more precise method. What we can do though is that if you have a contour that happens to run through this piece, you can just edit that piece of it out when you're in AutoCAD or when you're in Illustrator. Okay, so just, you know, when you're doing these kinds of things, most of the site, I've checked it, it actually patches pretty well. You know, this piece right here, this is another kind of thing too. Mostly at the edges where there's not enough data, it creates some funky things. Okay, so just kind of be aware of it, and you can edit it. A more accurate mesh is going to take a lot longer to create. It involves a lot more commands, and it's actually like the difference between being 95% accurate and 100% accurate is like 35 minutes of work. So this is pretty useful. Again, you're just studying the site. You're not actually, this isn't a geographic operation. You're not actually going to use it to build. So I feel okay about this, about letting you guys use this for class, okay? So patch is a kind of simple operation, but when you do this kind of thing on your own, like the next time you do it, make sure you check it against the contours and make note of anything that seems really off, okay? And that will prevent you from running into any serious problems, okay? So, but you can see though, I mean, if you look at it, other than those kind of edge things that I showed, it's fairly close. Boy, that is way off though. Okay, so yeah, just kind of pay attention to it. You know, it's usually like the edges of things. Looks like the very top is maybe a bit off. Again, if you would like to talk about it, we can talk about how to get a more accurate version of the site. But for now, this is fine. This is going to be good enough. Okay. So take that patch file, go ahead, you might go ahead and make a new layer. I'm going to call this, you know, site surface. Maybe give it a handsome brown color or something. And then change it to your layer. Okay, so you have this layer available for tomorrow's class. So I'm going to make that current, and then I can hide everything else. If you want to move that surface layer around, you can click it and drag it, and you can drag it between layers or like onto a layer. Actually, I guess you can use these arrows here. There. If you click it, you can use these to move it up and down. So I can make it more important than Topo Lines. Okay, that's good enough for now. We'll take sections of this and render it in Illustrator on Thursday. As usual, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll see you then.